Welcome to 3DLANES number 65. Today, and this is new for the channel, I guess, or podcast, whatever you want to call it. Today I want to follow or establish a structure that I would like to follow because it's not that I've been all over the place because I've been following whatever the interest has been as of that week. But I would like to set up a little cleaner structure on how we will be following um, each or how we'll be setting up each episode. So in this case, last week we did camera. This week we'll do watches, and next week we'll do cars. So CWC, just easy to remember. And well, if you're only interested in one, you know when to wait or when to tune in. If you're interested in all of them, which is great, then you know you can listen every time. But yeah, so today we'll be talking about Doxa watches. And Doxa watches were founded in 1889 in Lille, Switzerland. And this specific watch brand has had a lot of hype in one specific branch of the watch world. But the funny thing is the inception of the brand is kind of different. It was not aimed to go that way, but it turned out to be that's the direction they're following nowadays, and we'll see why. But it's basically emphasizing on whatever made made them more appealing for the masses. Let's call it that way. Let's put it that way. But yeah, it was founded in 1889 in the cradle of Swiss watchmaking by George Ducommun. And I'm sorry for all the French names that I'll be mispronouncing today, but all that French that I took for or during college is kind of forgotten. This guy George, he was 21 years old when he created the brand. One of 13 children, not from a rich family, modest family, and he began his watchmaking apprenticeship at the age of 12 and was known for walking 20 plus kilometers, or like let's say 15 miles, to deliver watches personally. And the name doxa comes from the Greek word for glory. And this is, you can tell the ambition of this guy from, just the name of the brand, right? But the success of doxa came early through pocket watches. And this pocket watches won honors at World's Fairs in Liège in 1905, Milan 1906, and in 1907, Ducommun patented the eight day Doxa caliber. So basically lasted 8 days. And a dashboard mounted clock with an 8 day power reserve. That's what it was. And it became, or that's where it went, better said, because it became the standard equipment in Bugatti racing cars. So if you own a Bugatti and you want to be loyal or faithful to the beginning, you need to drive it with a Doxa. But jokes aside, this type of clock was later adopted in ships and airplanes, so it was not just for cars. This was Doxa's first foray into precision timing beyond just pocket watches or wristwatches. After Ducommun passed away in 1936, leadership passed to his son-in-law, Jacques Nardin, and he is the grandson of Ulysse Nardin, the brand, right? So he was the he was the grandson of the founder of the brand, Ulysse Nardin, and this brand Ulysse Nardin is renowned by making marine chronometer uh, watches, but under the leadership of Jacques, Doxa was able to expand into wristwatches with mechanical alarms, pointer dates, and eventually what was called the Graphic in 1957, and it was a Bauhaus style dress watch. But the defining moment of Doxa came in 1967 when they launched the Sub 300, that it's still in the catalog of the brand. But this is a professional grade dive watch designed not for military elites, but for the growing recreational diving community. So this watch was not aimed for the military, but more so for recreational divers. It was developed by engineer Urs uh, Escle, I'm going to say it, in collaboration with Jacques-Yves Cousteau, Jacques-Yves Cousteau's U.S. diver, sorry. So it was a team from Cousteau that helped develop this watch. It featured three firsts: the iconic orange dial that was proven via underwater visibility testing in Lake Neuchâtel, a unidirectional no decompression bezel based on US Navy tables, and the Beats of Rice bracelet with a wetsuit extension. This watch in 1968 gave uh, gave way to the Sub 300T Conquistador or Conquistador, became the first commercially available dive watch with a helium escape valve. And this was developed in parallel with Rolex, believe it or not. Then the quartz crisis came in between 1970 to 1980s, and this was basically the end of Doxa at that time. Doxa was under the Aubrey Frere Company, which was acquired in 1978. Production shifted to other designs that really didn't connect with the public, and then production basically dissipated in 1990s. Then in 1997, the Jenny family, owners of Jenny Watches, a historic partner in the sub's development, acquired the brand and began restoring its dive watch DNA with some faithful reissues. But the turning point of the new Doxa, the renaissance of Doxa, was the appointment of Jean Edöcs in 2019, sorry, who brought experience from Omega, Swatch, Milas, and launched a comprehensive brand reboot. But yeah, so Doxa moved from being a generalist Swiss watchmaker that became famous for diving to being a pure dive watch brand, which is what we know nowadays, right? They leverage the heritage as primary differentiator, kind of like when a new brand gets revived. It's most of the time is the same way. Um, and the pricing philosophy of Doxa is has been carried till today, but the distribution is what has changed. I shift from widely available to extremely selective. So Doxa is not available everywhere, as you can tell. And it was not too long ago that Doxa was not available in the US. I think Watches of Switzerland carried them only, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, I think I'm correct. And then now Toppers do have them here in California. So now you have a few more retailers, but it's not a lot. Uh, Now, if we analyze Doxa in today's landscape, what will be the threat of new entrants, right, for Doxa, meaning new brands coming into the market? Some barriers have been lowered, and what I mean with that is the Swiss watch industry has seen a proliferation of micro brands in the 200 to 2000 segment. I know I'm covering two segments there, but bear with me. This is mainly fueled by direct-to-consumer e-commerce since the pandemic that has led to this point. And a lot of these new brands have accessible Miyota, Seagull, Sellita movements, and pretty much low-cost manufacturing in Asia. There's also Kickstarter campaigns and Instagram for marketing, which have reduced some of the friction there whenever a new brand has to launch. There's contract manufacturers or CMs in Switzerland and China that can produce full watches to spec. You just have to come up with a design and maybe the drawings, the technical drawings with measurements and all that stuff. And it's you don't have to own a factory to have your own brand nowadays. Some of the barriers that have raised, meaning some of the things that are tough, is, for example, the Swiss made certification that requires at least 60% of production value and final assembly inspection has to happen in Switzerland. That is very hairy. I'm not going to get into it. If you there's a podcast from Collective Horology, I think. They made something that explains this a little better, so I'm not going to get into that. Uh, Another factor or barrier is heritage and authenticity. They're critical enthusiasts and collectors that are very against, just showing up with your own design out of the blue and not have any history. So you cannot fabricate history of 100 years, kind of like what Doxa have, what for example Fears, right? They can leverage that. The Cousteau connection, you cannot leverage that because you don't have it if you have your own new brand. The creation of the helium escape valve, or HEV, you cannot make that up because you didn't make it. You don't have the patent proof. So all that stuff, Doxa actually has a leg up in that sense. Um, the next one is access to quality Swiss movements. It could be a bottleneck. For example, ETA or ETA, from the Swatch Group, they used to restrict third-party movement sales, but after 2019, supposedly there was a deregulation that even the Swiss government tried to get in to make them sell Swiss movements to microbrands and everybody else, not just to the Swatch Group, not keep it like so tight. But Sellita is now a dominant third-party supplier with 60% market share for non-Swatch brands. But the supply is not infinite, so there's also that caveat. Like, you might want to get in, but they might not be able to supply movements to you, because not because they don't want to, but because they don't have them. There's also the retail access. Premium dealers like Watches of Switzerland, they're very selective on who they carry. I'm assuming Topper are also too. Collective Horology, they're also selecting who they want to carry. They're not going to carry just any microbrand that just knocks on their door. But yeah, those some of the barriers that we have seen. The bargaining power of suppliers, meaning in this case, like for example, ETA or Sellita, they're not that many movement suppliers, so they do have some power on over the brands, right? So, for example, Doxa, they do not manufacture movements in house, so they use the ETA 2824 or the SW 200. So their suppliers have pretty good power over them. The movement supply chain is concentrated. So Sellita produces 1 to 1.2 million third-party mechanical movements annually, and ETA, 500,000 to non-Swatch brands. And together, they basically dominate the supply of Swiss automatic calibers between 1K to 5K, that specific segment. Again, the Comco intervene, or the Swiss Competition Commission, intervened multiple times between 2013 and 2020 to manage ETA supply practices, which is throttling, how much they supply to people outside Swatch. And while the restrictions were lifted in 2020, ETA ability to cut off supply remains a structural risk for any non-Swatch brand. We have Doxa's annual production, which is around 10,000 pieces, and this is guesstimating, right? But it's relatively small going to one of these movement manufacturers, and it gives them less negotiating power compared to big buyers like maybe Oris or Longines, who have bigger manufacturing numbers. But Doxa has also indicated exploration of movement development, collaborations, and potential party vertical integration. We'll see if they do that, but at the moment they usually use ETA or Celita. The case materials that they use steel, forged carbon, ceramics. They have multiple Swiss suppliers, and reducing the concentration risk on the material side. So that in that end, you might be, they might not have a high power, the suppliers, but when it comes to movements, that's a big one. Bargaining power of buyers, meaning the customer, it's moderate, right? Between the 1K and 5K dive watch segment, you can find a bunch. You can find Oris, Longines, Tudors, Certinas, the deceased Zodiac. You can find them even cheaper. Some people say that they see them at Ross. I don't know. I haven't seen one. Well, I don't go to Ross, but not that I don't like going to Ross, but I kind of don't leave my house. But yeah, this segment is there's a lot of options. So the power of the buyer is quite moderate. The watch enthusiast nowadays is very, very informed, highly informed. There's Reddit, Watch You Seek, YouTube, Odinky, Fratello. There's so many publications where you can find information about these watches, and you can find price comparisons, sorry, or any other information specs that you might want to find on this watch compared to the other watch. So information is there. Secondary and gray market offers modern Doxa pieces at slight discounts, not a lot, but you might be able to find something cheaper than actual retail. Pre-owned watches in general are growing as a channel. Deloitte reports Gen Z are driving demand for pre-owned. This increased cross-shopping with new pieces at similar price points, right? So if you find one in good condition, you might go for the used one instead of the new one. So this is a big piece of the market nowadays. Some of the factors decreasing buyer power. For example, Doxa doesn't offer discounts. I never seen a discount on Doxa. Limited editions, they sell out pretty quick. The brand focuses only in one thing, and it's one identifier for the brand, which is there's no other brand that can claim to be exclusively a dive watch company, and having the Cousteau heritage, right? So there's no brand like that. So that's something that Doxa has going for them. Doxa knows a majority of its customers directly through the e-commerce platform, and this generates over around 500%, 50% of revenue for them. So this enables personalized engagement, and it reduces reliance on intermediaries for Doxa. So the other thing to analyze is the threat of substitutes. Substitutes we can catalog as smartwatches. Smartwatches that have come out. Some of them they aim to some of the watch enthusiasts or the shallow enthusiasts, right? The new Apple Watch, I don't remember the name, but the one that's pretty hardcore. That one has a appeal to a lot of people. It has the functionality that you want from one of the most robust watches, like the dive watch. They also have to compete with fashion watches like MBMT, Daniel Wellington, and all those, because for some people, watches are just an accessory. They're not really into all the specs as some of the watch nerds we are. But there's also adjacent luxury categories. So between 1K to 5K level, you consumers can also cross shop with other luxury goods, right? They don't have to go specifically for a watch. It could be jewelry, it could be sunglasses, it could be travel for some of the newer generations. Uh, the desk diver positioning means Doxa competes for discretionary luxury spend, right? So it's not just for actual people that go diving. I'm not suggesting that all the Doxa owners are not divers, but a big percentage of them are desk divers. They compete with vintage watches. Some of the pre-owned pieces like Omega, Tudor, even Rolex can be found between 2 and 5K range. This creates direct competition from the more established luxury names. All other micro brands like Synchron, right? They offer something very, very similar to Doxa, and it's almost half the price of a Doxa. We also have Baltic, Laurier. Also, they offer dive watches. Maybe not the same aesthetic you're looking for. It might not be the same quality, but the competition is there for sure. Some of the mitigating factors could be the mechanical watches uh, increasingly function as basically emotional purchases. Nobody needs a watch anymore. They are identity markers, collectibles. I mean, yeah, you can check the time on them, but a lot of times it's more emotional purchases. Doxa specific heritage, that's another one. Cousteau, Dirk Pitt, HEV, the helium escape valve, co-development with Rolex, the orange dial patent. Those are intangibles that not nobody can substitute, right? That's very, very Doxa. The rivalry, the competitive rivalry is pretty high. Again, you have Oris, Longines, Tudor, Certina, Zodiac. So there's a lot of competition within the market, um, which is not the same as power of substitutes, right? This is how how is the competition or the threat of substitute, sorry, but the competition if there's competition within the market or without that segment already. So from this we can see the segment is growing in attention but not in volume necessarily. Swiss watch experts volumes have contracted in recent years, even as values increased. There's a product differentiation really is really narrow, but it's there. Most brands use ETA or Celita movements, sapphire crystals, 200, 300-meter water resistance. So the specs are very, very similar. So it depends on the aesthetic and what history you want on your watch. There's group back competitors like Longines. They have Swatch behind them. Tudor, they have the Rolex group behind them. And they have obviously bigger marketing budgets, deeper retail networks, and movement manufacturing advantages. Tudor just opened their own big movement manufacturer. Longines benefits from the ETA movements. There's also the Doxa deliberate volume restraint, so 10,000 around 10,000 pieces, right, a year makes them a niche player. This limits head-to-head rivalry with the volume players, but also means less brand awareness. So the CEO Jan Edöcs has stated Doxa will not pursue mass distribution, and he emphasized on there is value in saying no. So he wants to stay that way, and I respect that. The no discount policy effectively removes Doxa from price-based competition. And it seems like it's not a negotiable, given that Deloitte in 2024-2025 highlight highlight aggressive discounting as growing problem across the mid-range Swiss segment. So, and by not doing this, I think Doxa is doing something good. Online community influence is very significant for Doxa. Watch forums and YouTube reviews heavily shape purchase decisions in this segment, and Doxa has benefited from positive editorial coverage, Hodinky, Fratello, Time+Tide, and collective word of mouth. So, what do we think about Doxa? I have had Doxa in my radar for a while. Have I purchased one yet? No, I don't own a Doxa. I've seen a few in the wild, but I do not own one. What do you think about Doxa now that all the facts have been given? Well, let me know if you have a different opinion, or what your opinion is. You can leave a comment or whatever you listen to your podcast, or in social media if you're interested. Thank you for stopping by. I am Denny. I will see you next time.